very clean way the social information that we really wanted. And in many ways, that sort of is all proven true, that social mapped against mobile perfectly. But one of the questions we wanted to raise in this panel is, has mobile marketing caught up to that? Has social marketing really caught up to that? Are those who are using social marketing, how are they figuring mobility into their plans, and how much does it figure into their thinking about social media generally, in knowing that now this stuff is being experienced no longer on the desktop, but in a range of different contexts? To take the lead on this, I've asked a mainstay at MediaPost and one of our most prolific columnists, David Berkowitz. He's the VP of Emerging Media at 360i. He's written, I think by your count, your last count is what, 350 columns?
400.
400 columns, okay. We're going to have to, at some point, we're going to have to arm wrestle over this, over who's written the most. At 360i, he helps advise brands, especially, and has had an abiding interest, especially in social media and also in mobile media. Old friend of MediaPost, David Berkowitz.
Hey, thanks a lot, Steve. So, yeah, hi everyone. How are you doing? Good? Cool. Yeah, we'll keep this interactive, and really, I mean, I'm inclined. This is a bit of a full day, so I want to break for audience questions on the earlier side. So as you have stuff you want to get out there, even if I haven't formally said like, oh, this is the time, like, raise your hand, shout something out, we can have some fun. And I think this is a good crew here to handle improv. So instead of talking too much more, I'll let the panelists go down the line and introduce themselves, and just a quick 30-second take on what they're doing on a panel about mobile social media. And if you're not supposed to be, then there's some refreshments outside. And then we'll get into to the scrum here. So go for it.
Hi everybody, Ken Burbary. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Campbell, Ewald, which is an agency based in Detroit, owned by the Interpublic Group. My role there is I lead the digital business for all the clients we do marketing and advertising for online. So that includes social media marketing, includes mobile marketing, includes all of the forms of digital marketing that you could think of: paid search, paid display, email, the whole 9 yards.
My name is David Coomer. I work with Cornett. I'm the Chief Creative Officer there. We're a full-service agency that works with a small handful of clients, and what we do for them, we handle everything from media buying in-house to digital innovation in-house and R&D, obviously creative and marketing and public relations and kind of online cultural earned media efforts and so on. So I'm kind of the glue that really works with all these different units to bring a brand together.
My name is Andy Ellwood. I lead business development for Waze. Waze is a community of 47 million people that hate traffic and work together to outsmart it.
I like the way you described that. My name is Rob Wilk. Hello, everybody. I'm on this panel because I work at Foursquare. So the intersection of social and mobile is where we were born. It's what we do every day. We're a mobile-based social network, so it kind of makes sense.
I'm Joe Cianciotto. I'm Executive Creative Director of DDB New York, Chief Digital Officer at DDB New York as well. And for us, I think people will be surprised. I know DDB from watching Mad Men, and it's this very storied, long agency with a long heritage, but we actually in DDB New York do more digital than we do print and TV combined. So for us, it's been a mobile and social, for that matter, have been a critical element of the digital mix as we've kind of changed our clients' output.
Awesome. And Andy, is it going to be like 48 million by the time this panel is over? Because every time I see you, it's like you just keep bumping up those numbers.
I joined end of last year, and we were in the mid-20s, and 6 months later, we're in the mid-40s. So things are trending in the right direction. But when you think about it, if traffic had a Facebook page, no one would like it. So that bodes well for us.
Nice. Yeah. I just had to ask because I know it's impossible to ever get the numbers right with you guys, and also just to be fair, like how many billions of check-ins or whatever? What's a fancy number, Rob?
3.5 billion check-ins on Foursquare since we've launched.
Okay, cool. So
actually 3.5 and 1 because I checked in here. So did you, by the way.
I don't want to be biased or anything. So anyway, getting into this, I think one of the first things I want to do is go right to the premise of this panel, and it's like all mobile is social, I think was the way it was phrased. Do you even agree with that? I mean, how do you see the world right now, what you're doing? These are jump balls. So, yeah.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. It's murky. I don't know that that's true 100%, but technically, almost every mobile app now is social. That said, take an app like Shazam. I mean, the primary use for that isn't social. It's a mobile app where people, use it for a different purpose, but there's sharing capability involved. So it is both. I think what's happening is that social experiences are turning into mobile experiences as a result of mobility and everyone walking around with supercomputers in their pockets. And so that changes how we approach experience design and the opportunities for brands to come up with amazing experiences that have some kind of a value exchange. But trying to separate it in, like we do in our business and have some nice, really well-defined swim lanes is the problem. I think we need to throw that away and look at them as an overlay over everything we do as opposed to a channel.
I think that from our standpoint, Waze was started in 2005 around the idea that contributing to real-time traffic from other drivers really would provide a service that wasn't available. Most of the traffic information out there is based on cameras counting license plates. With Waze, just by having the app open while you drive, you're contributing to our maps. Our maps rewrite themselves in real time based on drivers currently on the road, just by having the app open. And so that does make it a very social experience. So I know that when I'm stuck on the 405 in San Francisco, I know that there's going to be slow traffic until the bend when you get past the airport, because other drivers are further ahead of me. But I also know that by reporting a hazard on the side of the road, using our voice commands, that's helping drivers that are behind me. So as a result, it's not just an app, it's not just a service, but it's actually a community-based value proposition. And people get really attached to that, and that's part of the reason that we have, I think, the growth that we do, even though I will admittedly say we don't have the best virality or a good loop to get people signed up. People literally just tell other people, hey, today I saved 8 minutes using Waze, and when you can give people back that type of time, it becomes a really social conversation piece.
Right. And anyone else? Or yeah. So how much on the planning side of this, like, I mean, let's start with those on the agency side of it. How much are you, like when you're doing something like this, does it come up like, oh, now I'm doing a mobile social thing? Or like, I mean, when does this even come up that you'd work with someone like a Waze or a Foursquare or any of the other thousands of options out there?
Yeah, I think really the strategy drives that opportunity rather than shoehorning something in. I think, for instance, for account of ours, Eagle One, an automotive appearance product, it really wasn't, let's find a mobile strategy for this brand, but whether it's geofencing in the store and getting more hand-to-hand combat on the price points, or another like digital innovation for that brand of competing in the car show space instead of having a physical presence at the events, reinventing the car show experience through a mobile social application where people can share that and still emulate that exact experience in an environment that's inherently social anyway. So a lot of that is also just driven by the strategy of what was right for that brand from a sales perspective and a social and sharing perspective.
One thing that I think is interesting, though, so many times like with clients and social, and mobile, it's one of those things where a social, a few years ago, you go to a client and say, you need to do social, and this is the reason why, here are the KPIs. It's like, I don't want to do that. And then, 18 months later, they're like, oh, I have this social agency. Why don't you come to me with this quicker? So I think there's a lot of a whipsaw out there in regards to the ability to educate clients and work as a partner. And I think we find that even just getting them to think, like trying to take opinion out of it. I think a lot of times some clients are like, well, why do I need a mobile site? To the extent I do, we show them the metrics and say, okay, you're in acquisition, you're in the business of acquisition, and you've got, I don't know, 1 million people coming to your site every month. And did you know that 280,000 of them are from mobile? Well, when you run that ROI, you realize you're leaking about 28% of your efficacy, and so it's helping them to realize that this is critical in the mix. And then even things like adaptive technologies, where just because you have your mobile site doesn't have to be a simulacrum of your website, and getting them to sort of think that, I think, is really important, because I think, again, I love selling great creative things we'll do on Twitter and on Foursquare and Facebook and the like. I think, though, to create a foundation where these aren't just one-offs, is to get the clients in a place where they're very, very comfortable in the space, and they understand how they can go to their bosses to get funding to keep doing this stuff. And I think that ultimately, many times, tends to drive a lot of our ability to sell some of the newer things out there.
I'm going to add to that. I think it's a great point. One of the challenges is that in a lot of organizations, they're owned by different people or different groups. So there's silos. Here's social and here's mobile, and to get them to agree and come together, sometimes can be a big challenge. And that's where you can cut through that with some of the data and the metrics that says, hey, here's the opportunity in raw numbers. This is what we're missing, as opposed to subjectively trying to win that argument. And the social component of this approach is a lot more appealing than the mobile component. That's the wrong approach in my experience.
Yeah, so full disclosure, we all saw some of the questions that you were going to ask, before we got up here so we could prepare. So I looked at our data and I said, where do we get our business from? And I talked to a bunch of our salespeople and I couldn't get consensus. And it's really interesting because when you look at what Foursquare does, if we're talking to a client or if we're talking to an agency, should we be talking to the social team? Should we be talking to the mobile team? Should we be talking to the local team? And what's interesting is there's if you look at all the buys that we've gotten buys from account teams. We've gotten buys from search teams. We've got buys from mobile teams. It's kind of all over the place. So, and I'm assuming you probably see something semi-similar at Waze, is that I think a lot of the clients and agencies are still trying to figure out where some of this stuff fits. And I'll tell you, just anecdotally, that we end up fitting with the person who really loves Foursquare. I say that not to be self-promotional, but just someone who uses the product and really understands it tends to drive the strategy and drive the belief that this is a viable option.
Well, I mean, Rob, you were at Yahoo for a long time. It's like are the clients or the agency folks, are they using Google or Yahoo, and that's going to determine if they want to show up there. So that part's nothing new, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, before I was at Waze, I was at the company called Gowalla, and Gowalla and Foursquare launched on the same day.
I never heard of them.
Right, I know. Launched on the exact same day at South by Southwest, not knowing the other one existed until 5 days beforehand. We both had a mobile app that had a check-in button. And for the 2 years until Facebook acquired Gowalla, we were literally head-to-head in every single thing. And a lot of times, I'd be called into an agency immediately after somebody from Foursquare, literally back-to-back. We'd sit in the waiting room together. And the objective was do a deal in location. Right? That was actually the extent of it. And what typically ended up happening is, Tristan Walker, who was running biz dev at the time, and I, we would just, it was kind of whoever had checked in on, as Rob said, checked in on Foursquare, checked in on Gowalla. But a lot of times they would just say, we don't really care. When it's all said and done, what we want is to be able to show our CMO at the end of the year that we did a location-based campaign. And frankly, we don't even know what that means. And since 2009, 2010, and the location-based wars of 2011, which we are both survivors of, it's really grown up a lot, where it's no longer, this is just fun, we should do something, to let's think about what it is that we're trying to actually encourage or think our customers or our clients want, and then what are the tools or the resources that we can use across all platforms or within one specific platform, because the robust offerings that Foursquare now has, or what we're building with Waze, there's a lot of different ways that you can tweak and hone things based on what you're trying to get out of it. And that's one of the things that we do a lot of just education with, is whether we're talking to brands or agencies, when it's all said and done, how are we going to know this worked? And a mashable headline doesn't count.
I just think one thing we need to think about, it's funny because the challenge to us as agency folks is you have the agency person come in, they're going to try to sell you creative. The media folks are trying to sell you media. Everyone's going to try to sell their stuff. And I think what's incumbent on us, if we really want to move the bar, is to not think about what our wheelhouse is. And I'll give you an example. One area that, and again, I guess some of these questions were peppered and how I was thinking about it is, how do we see mobile as being effective? And, I think it's funny is when we really had the unlock with our clients, when we said to them, at the very least, it's an opportunity to gather content and push it into your ecosystem. And for instance, we have Reebok as a client. So the idea is, we can take content and push it in that's from events and bring it into the site. And it's funny. I'm not going to Cannes with that, and we're not going to get a media buy with that, and no one's going to sell an app with that. But I think it's getting clients to start to understand the utility of it in a way that isn't just when we're there to sell something. And I think that inherently is what really starts to change the way they look at things, because we still live in a world, again, as much as we've gone so far, we still marketing is one of those environments where it's a lot less risky to sell your boss on a director who's an extra $1 million than it is to say, give me $30,000 to go do this little thing over here because I don't know what that is, And I think we have to really kind of lead clients and really partner with them and learn at the same time from their infrastructure.
So I want to build on that, and I want to ask one more question, and then I do want to get to Q&A, assuming you have some. So, but building on what you were saying, and I love the concrete examples, why don't we hear more about just one specific thing that you've done with a brand in the mobile social arena that you think just worked in some way and that really excites you?
I'll give 3. So one, because I cheated and prepared for that question.
You guys prepare? What's up with this?
So a few different examples. I work in an advertising agency, so we run a campaign, and that campaign goes across lots of different channels. Extending that into mobile and social, and a client of ours, OnStar, was actually really successful. There's interesting companies out there that have solved some of the infrastructure that you need in place to reliably get your content out, that promotion, that offer, that opportunity across the mobile social context. In this case, there's a company we worked with called Local Response that's actually based here in New York. Another example, different about extending social and mobile out into customer service is Delta Assist for Delta Airlines. I fly Delta Airlines all the time. If you fly Delta and use those platforms, I encourage you to check them out. But you could basically rebook a flight, ask Delta's Medallion customer service to help you on Twitter, though, or Facebook, without ever having to pick up a phone. So send them a DM, you say, I'm running late, I'm at a panel at a conference, I'm on the 4:15, I need to be on the 8:15, and they go back and forth 2 or 3 times, and your flight's changed. So I think that's a really good example of where they're extending utility into a channel that is more of a priority for me or comfortable for me than picking up the phone. And then the last one I'm not involved in, I'm just a fan of, which is Nike. I think they do a fantastic job with their Nike Fuel app and their Nike Running app because there's some pretty serious social integration in it. You see, a leaderboard. Who's running the most of the people you're connected to on Facebook that week? Who's leading in the daily race for fuel points? And all of that encourages sharing, friendly competition, in some cases wagering and shit talking, all in one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for us, the example would be Buffalo Trace Bourbon. And it's a brand that's a really, in your back pocket brand. So we've put together this national grassroots program that we have grassroots managers in multiple cities throughout the U.S. And, they're at tailgating events, they're at, music venues, they're at all these different places, just being a part of that community. And we wanted to replicate that experience in a digital facet with BuffaloTraceSaloon.com, a mobile social network that just mimics all of these things that they were participating in on the ground level. And they were sharing these things, on Facebook, on Twitter, et cetera. They wanted this community, and we wanted to replicate that entire experience. So I think that it's important to stand back and look at the consumer behavior similar to, even Waze, people standing out on the side of the road to see how far traffic's backed up or whatever. They're communicating these things. And I think that just having that clarity for our entire team to look at, okay, what is the behavior that's successful that is not digital, and then how do we emulate that in a mobile social way?
And are you carrying it in your back pocket now?
In a flask, yes, that's right.
Awesome.
One of the programs that I oversee at Waze is our broadcaster program. So we now power over 30 local TV broadcasts. They're morning traffic reports. And we built that originally with Carmageddon in Los Angeles a couple years ago, where they shut down the 405. Because our entire platform is crowdsourced, we were able to, our community shut down the 405 on the maps. So since our maps rewrite themselves in real time, nobody was routed onto the 405. All other navigation systems that weekend, if you got turned away from the 405, it kept telling you to make a U-turn and go back onto the 405. And that really was kind of a light bulb for us that the broadcasters are able to actually interact with people that are on the road, giving them feedback. And so like our Los Angeles TV station has over 20,000 people that have raised their hand saying, I want to help make traffic better because Los Angeles traffic's horrible. And those people, by just joining that ABC 7 traffic spotter group are working together with each other to actually make the traffic better, and then they're getting interactions with the on-air talent. And that ends up being a really virtuous circle for us from the standpoint that the more times they put us on air, the more users we get. Because of the way our platform is built, the more users we have, the better our data. The better our data, the more times they put us on air. And so that's been a really big success for us. And we're expanding at a pretty rapid pace with local broadcast.
Great answer. So I just want to say Starbucks, just because I figured we haven't said it yet. So I'm actually not going to use Starbucks as an example. I just feel like it's obligatory to talk about Starbucks. So I'm actually going to talk about Walgreens, which may or may not surprise people out in the audience, but Walgreens is actually, amazingly socially savvy. So they have an evergreen program with Foursquare where anyone who is near one of, I think it's 7,000 or 8,000 Walgreens locations, they actually push out through our ad product called Promoted Updates, different types of specials that you can get when you check into Walgreens. But the beauty of it is that they have partnerships with every single CPG company out there, whether it's deodorant or toothpaste or Pepsi or whoever it might be, so that when you check in, you actually get served a unique barcode, pick up that product, walk to the front, and they can actually scan your phone, which requires POS integration, upgrades. There's a lot of hardware and infrastructure to get that done, but they've got it to the point now where they can track everything from the impression on Foursquare to did this person check in or not, did they redeem, what did they buy, how much did they spend. They're incredibly sophisticated in that way, and they've been able to really scale up that program with us.
Are they leading that technology integration and then partnering back with you, or are you all systematizing or productizing that piece to be able to do it with other retailers?
So I wasn't aware you were going to ask me questions. That's
Sorry.
kind of awesome. I'm totally kidding. So it's a partnership between the two of us. So they had to build a significant amount of infrastructure, so it took them a long time. But where we come in is we serve the ads to people that are near Walgreens, and we actually help serve those unique barcodes every single time for them.
So they're viewing it as a competitive advantage that they have by leveraging your... Right?
Yeah, I mean,
if you think about... Because I think about that from just a platform standpoint. If people build on top of your platform, who owns it?
Yeah, no, they build a significant amount of that. The one thing I'll say is if you think about just, the idea of Walgreens, when you think Foursquare, you think, I'm going to check into the garden because I'm here to see, Jay-Z or whoever. People think of it as like, I want to celebrate these amazing moments, but there's all these other moments that happen in your life that are more ordinary, and Walgreens gets, I can't give you the numbers, but let's just say millions and millions of people to check in at Walgreens, which is, at the end of the day, a pharmacy, and it may or may not be that interesting, but it's worked very, very well for them.
Awesome going after Foursquare.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's hard act to follow. So yeah, I would say through the lens of an agency person, I obsess about my clients. So I think when you asked me this question, I thought about how did mobile and social, something that we've done, better our clients' experience. And we did something 2 years ago, a year ago, I guess, for the State Farm's on my clients. And there's this program called Go to Bat, where you basically pick one of 6 charities, and you sign up at the Home Run Derby, and it kind of kicks off there, and you play literally a game. And the team with the most points each week, that charity actually wins I think it's like $80,000 or something like that. So we ended up giving away close to $1 million towards the end of the year, and it was a great program. And the numbers kind of went like this, and then kind of plateaued, and they were fine. We realized in year 2, we thought about, okay, that's great, but how do we keep them moving? And we realized, okay, we're launching at the Home Run Derby, and we've had our media, and we realized, well, wait a second. There's like 30,000 seats in stadiums at the MLB all over, all season long. That inherently, in and of itself, is a media buy. So we began to actually integrate. We created a mobile app version of the game this past year. We put it in people's hands at the events, and we got them to actually begin to leverage, if you think about it, these 30,000 seats at a clip each time MLB game was played. Obviously, there was some participated more than others, but we saw the numbers go like this and then just take off like that. And an overwhelming amount of people were actually activating through mobile, and the majority of the repeat plays were from mobile, not from desktop. And where social plays into this, it was the kind of thing where you say, I'm going to bat for this cause and what matters to you, and you would share it out on Facebook, and if you shared it out on Facebook, you'd get an extra point, And so with mobile, it was amazing because we were able to actually in real time do that. But we noticed that when we looked at where people were playing, we started to notice around them other people were starting to sign up to play it as well. So for us, the media buy, through mobile, at these people in these rabid areas began to become a media buy to themselves from a geo level as well.
Awesome. These are great, and hopefully some good, inspiring examples for things that you might want to adapt and build on. I mean, what questions do you have? This is your show here, so these are really some of the best people you could assemble for this topic in the world. I'm excited. I'm happy to ask more questions myself. But
only if you check in.
I'm curious how your standard social programs on Facebook, on Twitter, on any of the standard desktop social networks that are now Tumblr, that are now showing majority usage on mobile, if knowing that migration has occurred very quickly for a lot of them, is changing the nature of those programs. If that awareness that the context has now shifted rather quickly has changed how you phrase calls to action, what sorts of calls to action people are more or less likely to respond to in that different context.
Well, for us it has, but it's also one of my greatest frustrations because of the limitations from a data and insights perspective that we can get right now. Mobile has, if you're talking social, for example, go to Facebook Insights, you'll get very little mobile-specific information about that page on Facebook. So how many likes came from mobile, for example? Okay, great, but how many visits on a from a mobile web experience? How many page views? That kind of stuff. It doesn't really tell us what we want to know because people use mobile devices differently than they use that desktop. The input types are different. Swipes versus a button or something. And I'd like to see the analytics improve more, where they're along the lines of what web analytics or more mature analytics and digital can do, so that we can start to separate and say, I want to compare and contrast. How do the people that come and visit this property in mobile look differently and behave differently than the people that do it on a desktop or a tablet? Because then we can start to do what you just said, is optimize content, optimize the experience when we're doing our experience planning, change how we buy media, targeting, all that.
And I think as those networks in particular, like in the case of Buffalo Trace Bourbon, they have a pretty deep fan base online, and we do promote content, within the news feed and promoted posts and so on. But more of our success is kind of coming out of those networks. I think that helps kind of maintain a relationship with people. EdgeRank kind of pulls the virality of some of those posts down a little bit, which also challenges you to make better content. But we can focus on making content there, or also curating our own audience on our own social network outside of those, and supplementing kind of entertainment and more information within networks like Twitter and Facebook and so on.
Well, and when you're powered or empowered with the information or data about what works and what doesn't, it makes it a lot easier to make those decisions. One of the things that in our partnership product that we have that's turned out to be pretty interesting is click to navigate. So with Waze, we always know where somebody is and we know where they're going, and so we can present anything in context to that route. And so if you go on right now, you can find that if you're returning a rental car, and you're driving to JFK, we can show you the cheapest gas on that route. Most other mapping, they put a pin and they draw 5 miles around you and they show you everything north, south, east, west. Waze is actually influencing the in-between and giving you that ability, and that click through navigate, we're actually putting that in context. It's 0.2 of a mile off your route, it's 3 miles away. And so the commitment, the only thing we're asking you to do is drive an extra 0.2 of a mile, which maybe 3 minutes, and then but it's in context to what how you're commuting, because that ultimately is why you opened Waze in the first place, which is to have a more optimistic driving experience.
Awesome. Yeah, Naron.
So first of all, I love Waze.
Thank you very much.
Including airports and terminals. David and I actually exchanged mayorships in some of the terminals.
That's actually hard to do. It's impressive.
It's quite. I know. It's kind of sad. My wife really loves that. Nothing
sad about it.
But our engagement bench still exists on Foursquare, which is really important. Going to the actual question that I have. So, and I'm sorry, agency people, but I'm actually more interested in their answers right now. You guys have amazing platforms, right? And people are absolutely engaged with it. The question I have is, how do you actually get success for a marketer like Kenneth Cole or like Walgreens or Starbucks that actually have their own apps, right? Starbucks has their own app, Walgreens has its own app. How do you actually get people to use it? Because as a frequent user, right, person who's been basically an early adopter, even I am not using these specials that are unlocked by Foursquare. Very rarely, right? And with Waze, while I'm driving and I see Dunkin' Donuts everywhere, I don't really go to Dunkin' Donuts because of that. So how do you actually make it actionable, and how do you measure success?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. So we're in a lot of meetings with clients who say, hey, you know, we love Foursquare, but we want to rebuild Foursquare within our app. And we're like, hey, good luck. It's kind of hard to do. So there are certain examples where we actually power. You know, we have open APIs. We power a lot of apps, by the way, including parts of Waze. But anybody here an Instagram user? I'm assuming a lot of people in this room are. So whenever you take a picture and you want to geotag it, they use Foursquare's location API. So we have a lot of those types of relationships, whether it's Flickr, Waze, Instagram, you know, I can name, you know, a million of them where we help power those apps. So we'll partner on those all day long. But I think to be direct about your question about how do you gauge success, you know, one of the things that we do with our initial native ad product, which is Promoted Updates, is we give you the data. If you're Kenneth Cole and you want to know how many people saw an ad, how many people clicked on it to find out the nearest location, and how many people checked in, that we give you, so you can actually understand how to bridge that gap between a mobile ad impression and an in-store visit. But we also have their full check-in history, so we can actually tell you, hey, of the people that checked in, how many of them were first time, or how many of them were actually lapsed users that you've now gotten them to re-engage. So we're a database company. You know, we have to sift through all this check-in data. So we're trying to take some of that genius and intelligence and flip it around and help marketers understand, you know, what does success look like. And you know, so far we've seen some pretty incredible results in terms of getting people to see an ad on Foursquare and then directly go there and check in.
Yeah, and I think it's a similar thought process in that the reason somebody opened Waze in the first place was to get from point A to point B and find the best route today based on current driving conditions. First and foremost, which is why, you know, when I introduced what Waze is, I said we're a community of 47 million people that hate traffic. And so we view any type of partnerships or ads that are placed in there as a feature that enhances or makes our drivers have a better experience. That's our goal in anything that we craft and create. So we're very limited as far as what makes it onto the map. But what we do think about it is, and this is something that we're continually building out with our a lot of beta test partners, and as we're continuing to mature the product, is around the proximity incentive graph. So if I'm driving on the highway and I present you with a free cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, and it's on the frontage road, right? It's just make an exit, hop into the parking lot, you get it. You'll probably do that, you know, if you're interested in coffee, because we're going to time gate it based on the time of day. But if we're going to ask you to drive 5 miles out of your way, we're going to probably have to do more than give you a free cup of coffee if we're imposing that on you. And so that's one of the things that we're actually working with marketers to say, you know, within 1 mile, this is what will move people. More than 1 mile, this is what it would take. And we're actually able to break that down brand by brand. And as we actually have those conversations going, we can actually make it smarter, make it better, and continue to really assess based on time of day or day of the week even, what makes the most sense for an individual user as well as for the community as a whole.
Do you allow them to raise their hand to you and actually tell you in some form or fashion what they're open to and what they're not open to? Because I think that just doing it without permission, even though they're part of the community, is kind of creepy, Big Brother-esque, right? How do you move from that to Big Sister?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's something that we think about because like I said, our ad product rolled out in November, so we're like 6 months, 7 months in, and it has been for the most part pretty general, kind of broad strokes that aiming after quick serve retailers being the obvious choice because those are things that people convert on and they're easily influenced by. But now we're starting to think there is, let's say, a large company that thinks about themselves as a coffee shop in the morning and thinks about themselves as fast food in the evenings, and they are changing what they present in different cities based on the data that they're seeing from whether people accept or deny offers within Waze, based on time of day, based on day of the week. And so we're continuing to help them utilize and kind of take that to the next level, whether it's just an impression or it's an actual offer that they can choose to accept.
I'll try to give you the most succinct answer that I can, which is whenever we decide whether we're going to serve an ad to somebody, that first hurdle is, are they in very close proximity to that location? That's obvious, right? But the next thing we look at is, does this person have a propensity to check into this type of establishment? Right? So hypothetically, if you were KFC, for example, and you want to reach people to drive them in to try their new boneless wings, which are, by the way, very funny commercials if you haven't seen them. That's the guy who says, I eat the bones. So we're gonna look at all of your check-in history, and if all of your check-in history is just high-end restaurants and you've never once eaten at a QSR, we might throw one impression at you just to test you out. But if you react or if you don't react and ignore it, we're gonna stop serving that to you. So you mentioned that sometimes you don't see some of these ads. If you've never checked into a Walgreens or a pharmacy and you show no propensity and no history, we may never show you that ad. So we try to do some of that targeting up front so that it doesn't feel like you're getting something that you haven't already shown a propensity to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, this is great. I think there's a lot more I want to ask you because you prepared and you saw a very long list of questions and just scratched the surface. But looking forward to having this at the start of the conversation. We'll wrap up here, and thanks everyone for a really great.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
So, and.